Hi, you guys. Welcome to my channel. My name is Karen Odd, and these are Karen's Oddities. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Regardless, I do want to ask that you give this video a thumbs up. Comment your thoughts below, even if you disagree with my content. And I also want to ask that you share this video and our channel with one person that you know, as I'm confident there is something here that both you and they can benefit from. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about perspective, but before I talk about that, I'll just give some updates on what prompted this video and why perspective matters as much as it does if you didn't think it did before this video. And I've talked about this in previous videos. I think I talk about mental health quite often. I think it's incredibly important. I think that everyone can benefit from different mental health practices, whether that's journaling, walking, working out, getting quality sleep, meditation, religion, talking about your feelings, about your problems, talking to yourself in the mirror. There's so many different mental health practices that are incredibly helpful for people. But more specifically, I'm talking about therapy. So I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I know the importance of mental health, and I know some people are like completely against it. I've dated people like that. I've talked to people like that, and that's fine, right? But I will never change my mind on the importance of mental health and or therapy. And we can see it, right? People either getting institutionalized, people needing, and I'm not saying medication isn't always necessary, but sometimes people being medicated unnecessarily because they're not doing therapy. So it's like a bandage on top of whatever's going on up here. People not working through past hurt and traumas, and that showing up in how they love, don't love, or how they build friendships and other relationships, etc. Therapy is incredibly important and incredibly valuable. Not all therapy is good therapy, and therapy is only as good as you let it be for you, or only as good as you are open to it. That's with everything, right? All the tools and systems that we receive, they're only as good as we use them. They're only as good as we apply them. They're only as good as we do the legwork and we do the work as well. Nothing is going to solve all of your problems. There are still things that you have to do to get the best out of whatever this thing is. So I've done therapy officially 3 times. Well, yeah, we're not going to count the one therapist that I had to fire. I did therapy in 2017 when I was in college. I was a first generation college student. My mom got a full ride to like a top university here in the state that I live in. And I don't know, I never really talked to her about why she opted not to go. I think it's because she got pregnant with my brother and then got married, or married and pregnant, something like that. But yeah, she graduated top of her class, got a full ride to like the top university in my state. And she did not go. My dad, there's a police driving down my street. My dad did not go to college either. And as it relates to like my siblings, I'm the only person that went. And I don't know how it happened. It was really weird. Growing up was weird, isn't it? Growing up is weird. If you're still growing up is weird. And even when you're an adult, being an adult is weird. But when I was in high school, I started working at 16. I loved working. I loved making money. I loved being busy. I loved learning and like helping solve a problem. So I worked a lot. Like there was a point when I was 16, 17, I had 3 jobs. Like I would have and I was going to school. I had a calendar and I would like color code this day I'm doing this. And I remember sitting with my advisor and she was like, you are working a lot. And I'm like, I am, but I'm still going to do it all and I think I'm also like manic and stuff, which is a different conversation that we're not going to get into. I have moments of mania, which add to like, I just want to be busy. I want to do all these things, but I was working 3 jobs. I was going to college and I didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't apply to schools really. I applied to some because it was part of like the last senior year thing to do, but I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I didn't really care about my grades when I was in high school. I'm like, okay, I'm passing, cool. Like everything was like low effort for me as it related to school. I never really applied myself. There were subjects that I loved. Like I love English. I enjoyed science. We didn't have psychology, but it's like that's always been like my primary, like number one true love. But I loved English. I loved writing. And I loved sciences. I hated math and didn't really care for history, although I know it's super important. Not the point. Point is, working a lot, somehow ended up enrolling in a local college, which I'm glad that I did, but like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And no one in my home knew what I was doing either, because no one had experienced it. And no one knew what it entailed. And no one knew that it's incredibly difficult to do if you're working 3 jobs and you don't know what you're doing and there's no blueprint for it. Thankfully, I was part of like a learning community that ties you to an advisor. I think I was meeting with him weekly, and we would like check in on my progress and like where I was struggling, and put a pathway to like graduation and like determine what my major is and things like that. If I could do it again though, like knowing what I know now, what do they say? Hindsight is 2020. If knowing what I know now, I would do it incredibly differently, right? I would not work because I was still living at home. I didn't have to work. I didn't have bills. I just liked working. I like being busy. I like being a busy bee. I like making money. But I wouldn't have worked, and I would have just like straight up like school would have been my work because I had the luxury of being able to do that. I was commuting there. I was still living at my parents' home. I could have just literally dove into work. Shit, I'd have a fucking PhD right now. Honestly, if I would have just done straight work like that and like busted my butt at work, I'd have a PhD right now. No doubt about it. Because it would have like the foundation of like that first degree and experience and the ability to just focus on that. I think that momentum would have just built off. But it was incredibly difficult. I say all that to say, balancing being a first generation college student, questioning whether or not like I belong in these spaces in classrooms, even though my school that I went to was pretty diverse, but still questioning like, my grades weren't good in high school. I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing this right? My grades aren't that great. Having to pay for school because my parents made too much money for me to get any financial aid, and I didn't apply for scholarships because again, I wasn't thinking about these things. I wasn't a great academic student in high school, not because I couldn't do it mentally, just because it wasn't a priority for me. So in 2017, and then I'm dating, mixing 3 jobs, working, going to school, and then trying to date, and then being like obsessed with this boyfriend, because it was like my first real boyfriend after my first real one, and I was going through it. Like I was depressed. The stress from school was incredibly overwhelming. The stress from working late, the stress from my relationship, the stress from like still living in my parents' home while I appreciate it, but I have this one box, and that's the only box where like I can live and exist freely, right? Like I can't fucking walk around naked in my parents' home, or I can't like hang out in the living room and just change a channel because someone was already in there doing that, right? So it's like this being limited in my space, all these things. I wasn't driving. Like there were several limitations that were just adding to my depression, and I went to therapy at that time. That was my first time. I don't even remember how I signed up, but I think I was just incredibly like depressed and like not in a good headspace. So I did that for a year. Steven was my therapist. And he was just an older man. He was brown, but I don't know what kind of brown. He was brown though. Just things in perspective. He could have been white, but he was brown. He looked brown to me. But his name was very white. Not the point. And we worked through some things, and then I remember he broke up with me. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee. Steven broke up with me. I was talking to my friend the other day, and we were both agreeing. He's like, I always get, like, he said that about himself, that he always gets broken up with. He never breaks up with people. I'm the same way. I always get broken up with. Because I'm like, I'm never willing. I broke up with someone one time. One time I did break up with someone. And I think it's because I wasn't that invested yet. And it was in the middle of COVID, and it was complicated. But, for the most part, I always get broken up with. I think because I am a lover girl, and like I'll keep trying and like being hopeful for the relationship connection. I don't want to be the person to do it. So like I'll wait for them to do it, if that makes sense. Not the point. Anyway, did therapy in 2017. He breaks up with me. Basically on the basis of like, well, I think we've like, I don't know. And like now that I'm thinking about it, is this some trauma that I have that I need to work through with my current therapist? But I'm like, he was basically like, we've reached like, I think we've made some progress, but what if he just got bored of what I was talking about? And like, he's probably like, okay, Karen, you keep talking about the same things. But yeah, because the same things are still a problem. But yeah, it was a year. And I don't know if like university therapists have like those limitations, or if they see enough progress and it's like that's the rule, you have to like cut it off so you can serve other students. But I did it for a year. They did try medicating me, and like I took the medication. Like I tried one, that one was making me like hallucinate, and then I took another one, and then like I just stopped taking it altogether. And I'm fine, clearly, thank God, let me knock on wood. But I think medication, in some cases, it is absolutely necessary. And again, I'm not a medical professional, so don't take this as medical advice. I think in some cases it's absolutely necessary, but I think in other cases like um, it, depending on how mild the situation is, I think that there's workarounds medication, right? There's other ways to stay balanced. There's other ways to avoid going on the deep end in some cases. So fast forward 2017, 2018, 20, blah, 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 all these years, didn't do therapy. Would I think about it? I would think about it, but then I wouldn't go. Then like I did have an incident 6 years ago, 2023. No, my brain, 2020. It's like 2020-ish, where I'm like, I need to see some, like I was beyond the deep end. I was in the end. I was in the end. And at that time, my insurance was like, I had a weird insurance. And that's the other thing, which is really, really silly and stupid about the United States of America. And I don't know about other countries because I live in the US, but I think it's really stupid how medical systems work, insurance, all these things. For some things, it shouldn't matter if you're insured, if you're not insured. If someone is saying, I need to talk to someone, I'm losing it, they should be able to talk to someone. If someone is coming and saying, I need help, they should be able to get that help. It's just like a humane thing. You know what I mean? But here in America, we don't care about humanity. We care about money and assets, and it's a capitalistic society. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, so I remember going to like this place, but like the place, and I'm not talking junk, but I am talking junk. The place was like, I think it was like for people that were like on drugs and stuff. Like, I just felt very out of my element. Even walking in there, I'm like, what am I doing? But in my mind, I'm like, I need something. I knew that if I didn't get something, I was this close to like, it's over, right? So I went in there, like we did this like intake form, and I don't know what happened, but it never followed through. I didn't get the help, but somehow I got out of the hole, thank God. And I think it was all the things that help us get out of the dark headspace sometimes, right? It's working out, it's talking to friends, it's our pets, the one that's drinking water, and this one over here under the couch. It's all of those little things that can sometimes keep us from going on the deep end. And sometimes people don't make it out, right? Unfortunately. But then I had an incident in May of 2024, so this past year, and then I started seeing a therapist, and then I saw her for literally a year to be exact, and she actually passed away. She passed away on Memorial Day weekend. And she was older. It was very, very sudden. I had I like meeting with her in person because it was like 5 minutes from my house. I want to see people, and it gives me a reason to like get dressed up and go out of the house, especially because I work from home. So I remember the last two sessions, she made them virtual. They called me and they're like, hey, so and so needs to make this virtual, she's not feeling well. And I'm like, okay. So like we literally had a FaceTime phone call, and she told me like what she was feeling, and she wasn't feeling good, and she said she went to the doctor and like ER, and they said you need to go see your primary care, and she was like insistent. She's like, I'm gonna go see them this coming weekend. And she was like having pain in her back, and in my head I'm like, is this a hantavirus? I thought she had the hantavirus. I'm like, it sounds like pneumonia, but of course I'm not a doctor, right? So it's like I didn't tell her that, but I'm like, okay, we'll go in. And yeah, then I got a call. And when I got the call from my therapy place at that time, I knew what it was. I knew what the call was. She was older. She wasn't feeling well. It had been like 2 weeks she wasn't feeling well. And I got the call that she had passed away. And I mean, loss is difficult always, right? My dog just farted if you heard that. Loss is always perfect timing, right, Jack? Um, Loss is typically always difficult, and different losses hit differently, and people grieve differently. Um, my therapist that I was working with was not the best therapist. She was not the most professional therapist, but she helped me significantly in that year that I was in. And I think in a lot of ways, she helped me from going off the deep end. And we did make some headway and we did get some things done. And she did like remind me of things that I need. Like it wasn't all trash, right? Because I've broken up with therapists where it's like completely trash. Like we're not getting anywhere. This is a waste of my time. But with her, it was a little bit of, it was a mix, right? It was like, yeah, you're unprofessional. Yeah, we've blurred the lines of professionalism. I'm learning about your life, etc. You say some crazy things, but you're helping me. And that was what mattered to me, and why I continued to see her. And like separate from that, like I bonded with her, right? Like and maybe we trauma bonded, but it doesn't matter. Like she became like a good friend of mine where it was really hurtful to like have that loss all of a sudden. Because we had talked about like, even like we talked about like, when we're done with this, like my therapy, we talked about like going out and like getting drinks together. And I would have loved to do that. Um, and yeah, she was a very, she was very spunky. She was very outspoken, funny, headstrong, um, confident. She was fiery. She was all the things that I needed and that I appreciated. And yeah, and it was the other thing that made that loss for me weird is that here's this person that over the last year I've told my deepest, darkest secrets to. I've shared my most intimate thoughts, my most traumatic life experiences. I've cried, I've let it all out, let it all hang out, no filter, no anything. And that relationship and that like depository of information that I left there and with her, that all is gone. Like it's immediately erased, right? She's gone. And there was that piece of like grieving it, separate from grieving like the fact that I think she was a great person, that I would have loved to hang out with her outside of work. There's that piece of like me depositing all this, like my whole life into this person. And then the reality that it's like, I'm not done with the work that her and I were doing. I have to keep doing it. I'm not done. And thinking about mourning that this is no longer, and now I have to start again with someone new, right? And also the fear, oh, there's a blue jay in the tree. So cute. And also the fear of having to start over with someone new. And in this time, this transitionary period that I'm trying to identify someone new to work with, what happens if I go into the deep end? Like I was so scared. Like I was like, oh my God, like, I've been seeing her every 2 weeks. She's right around the corner. And now I have to set something up, because if I'm not in a good headspace, like what if I go, like it's a scary and vulnerable place to be in when you know that you're not in the best headspace. And I mean, I survived a couple weeks. Clearly I'm here. Hello. Thank God. But, nothing crazy happened. I just didn't know. And it was that like uncertainty of like, what if I go down the rabbit hole? So I think I didn't see anyone for like maybe a month, and it was fine. Like I know what I know, and I know what I need to do. I know how to cope. I know when I'm doing this, it's because of XYZ. Like I'm able to reflect and like trigger and reflect on my triggers and things like that. So, all that to say, I have a new therapist now. She was highly recommended to me from a friend of a friend. And I had my intro session with her. I had my session week before last, and I had my last session, my most recent session yesterday. And I'm trying to think. I'm very excited to have a therapist that is pushing me. I'm excited about her style, and she came highly recommended. So I'm confident that we're going to do a lot of deep, important work. Um, and with that long ass intro about therapy and my experience with therapy, um, I think one of the things that therapy does, which is key, is that it shifts your perspective, or it encourages you to consider different perspectives. So obviously there's that saying, life is about perspective, or other similar sayings. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Other sayings are, do you see the glass half full or half empty? Like, all of these things are based on perspective. And if you don't know what the word perspective means, I like starting with like definitions. So perspective is officially defined as a particular way in which something is viewed, understood, or evaluated. So it's really important to remember that everything that we've experienced and lived through, that is our lens, right? Like this invisible lens that we have. Um, Everything that I, Karen, see, experience, receive, that's based on my lens. What I've lived, what I haven't lived, what I've experienced, what I haven't experienced, who I grew up around, who my friends are, my dating history, my medical history, the state of my mental health, how well I've slept, my diet, all these things, that's my lens. And my lens is going to be completely unique from everyone else's. And the same is to be said about yours. Everyone is experiencing and interpreting things from what they have lived and who they are. And because of that, and I'm just looking at my notebook, because of that, sometimes like you can have an issue, whether it's like a physical issue, like how do I get this thing through the wall or through the doorway, or it's like interpersonal issue. Why am I struggling with so and so at work? Or why does my child not talk to me? And that's not always that, right? But I'm just giving you examples, right? So when you're only viewing things from your lens or from the front, and you're not walking around the issue or looking at it from a different way or a different light or a different perspective, you can get stuck there. You can get stuck. You get stuck with that problem and you're trying to solve it, but the approach that you're taking is not working, right? So sometimes good therapy can help you see things from a different perspective. And seeing things from a different perspective can oftentimes lead to a resolution, right? If you're struggling to reach that resolution, seeing things from a different perspective is more likely to get you to that resolution and that resolve. I also think that because of that, like, invisible lens that we're always wearing and using, that lens and viewpoint that we carry, there's a series of stories that we tell ourselves, right? And that story that we tell ourselves, again, is based on what you grew up hearing. What did your parents tell you? What did your siblings tell you? What did your grandparents tell you? What did you learn? What values were instilled in you? What were you told was good? What were you told was bad? And how do you apply that in everything that you do? How did that shape who you are as a person? And sometimes the stories that we tell ourselves, they're not always bad, but sometimes they're not helpful either, right? Those stories that we tell ourselves are actually sabotaging us. And we don't know any better, right? Because we're just repeating and using this lens that we've created over our lifetimes. So considering in your life, are there issues that you have, and have you considered viewing them from a different perspective? Have you considered, if it's with a person, asking them, well, what do you think about this? And understanding how they're viewing this issue. Have you considered consulting someone else to understand a better way to find a resolution? Have you considered doing research on this specific issue or thing? Because sometimes the story that we're telling ourselves about a situation, I don't know what's going on here, you guys. Sometimes the story that we're telling ourselves about a specific situation, can sometimes help us and it can sometimes hurt us, right? So thinking about the story that your mind keeps replaying, does it help you or does it hurt you? I don't want to tip this over. And I think with therapy or with any type of like perspective shift, you also have to consider and ask yourself, am I open enough to see things differently? Am I open and or willing to see things from a different perspective? Because if the answer is no, then there's your answer, right? You need to work on understanding why you're not open to receiving a different perspective or to trying to understand something differently. And if that first one is yes, I'm open, then when you are open to understanding and receiving a different perspective, the key is, are you open to trying things differently, right? When you receive this additional information, when you do this research, when you consult your friend about a problem and they say, well, hey, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that they felt XYZ, or maybe you should consider turning it this way, or how about you do this instead? When you're given that additional context and that additional idea and the different way of approaching a conversation or that different way of accomplishing a task, are you actually open to applying and using that different perspective and that different idea or that different tool? And if the answer is no, that's fine. There's no right or wrong, right? We're all at different levels of comfort and experience, and we're all at different levels. But if the answer is no, I think it's important to consider that you are going to be stuck for longer. The longer that you are unwilling to like shift your perspective or consider other ways of viewing and doing things, the longer you will remain where you are. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know that the intro was super duper long, but I hope that all of it was relevant to where we landed, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for watching.